Okay, it's the morning. I've had my tea. I filmed a video of me live reacting to my grades last night. I'll put down an edited version right here. So, it's a little before midnight, and so it is Friday currently. It's about to be Saturday the 23rd. I just got a bunch of notifications that grades have posted. So you're finding out along with me, and I'll do more of a video later. But for now, let's see if I improved past mid. Elements of legal study, satisfactory, and professionalism, satisfactory. I'm fine with those. Employment law, I got an A-. This is my first A-. Okay. And I got it in employment law, so I am very happy about that. Property, I got a B-, so yeah, you know what? If we're doing it a closed book, I honestly think that that's not too bad. So B- in property, A- in employment law, a C+ in introduction to legal advocacy, which I'm fine with because I thought I was going to get a C in that class. As far as I knew, like, yeah, I was gonna get a C in that class because that was what the grade was before being weighted. So it was enough to bump me up to a C+. I'm fine. That's a 2-credit course. I think it should be more credits, but we'll go with that. That's fine. Next up, I got a B in con law. Okay, not mad about that. That was a shockingly tough exam. Fair teacher, loved him. Sad I won't get him for any more classes because, he was a visiting professor. Next up, a B+ in crim law. So, that's all of my that's all of my classes. So a B+, a B, a C+, a B-, and an A-. What does that give me for this semester? That puts me at a 3.025. So interesting. Even though I only got one B+ last semester, I guess the C+ and B- were enough to outweigh the A-, or maybe because that A- was in a 3-credit course as opposed to a 4-credit course. Yeah, so my GPA went down very slightly. So I am disappointed in that. And again, that probably comes down to my legal advocacy grade, which I didn't do my best on that. I know, but hopefully these upcoming classes where I get to pick my own, it'll be much better. But yeah, grades are out. I did get an A-, but still, got an A in something, so I'm happy about that. I remain mid, but I had no failures at least. And yeah. We'll see if my legal writing improves by having a job this summer. I got the full spread of grades between C+ and A-. I got the full spread. So I think that is a fascinating result. And luckily I got the lowest grade in the class worth the fewest amount of credits. I do wish crim law was a 4-credit class, but hey, again, we'll see if I can boost myself up next semester. So now that it's morning, I've had my tea. Let's talk about it. So I guess the first real question is, how do I feel about them? Well, I think it's very interesting that I managed to get the full spread from C+ to A-, which I think makes me the most mid student I could possibly be. Because, and I think when I talk about these grades, I'll go in descending order from the class I did the worst in to the class I did the best in, and how I feel about that. So, let's get started. First, we're going with my lowest grade, Introduction to Legal Advocacy. I actually thought I'd do better in this class because there's a spoken component, and again, when I got the grade breakdowns, I did fine on the oral presentation, but I didn't do as well as I thought I could have. Actually, I take that back. I didn't do as well as I did the second time around because I volunteered to do it twice. But instead of grading me on both, they only graded me on the first one. and I really got tripped up on the first one. The second one, I was crisp, clean, pristine. I think that probably would have bumped my grade to maybe a B if I had been graded on my second performance rather than my first performance on the oral section. Actually, it probably would have bumped me up to a B minus because my brief still wasn't great. There was a combination of two things. One, time management was a massive issue. I wish I could say otherwise, but I really truly need to figure out like working on papers better, and I think my job this summer will help me out with that. And I'm going to talk about that a little more towards the end. The professor was kind enough to give us our grades in advance of at least what they were on paper before they get weighted. So on paper, I got a C in that class. So honestly, that bumped me up to a C plus. So that's kind of comforting. Again, I think I really could have gotten a B minus or a B with just a bit better time management. That's on me. It's the lowest credit course, which is like the godsend of this. But yeah, I wish I did better on that. So let's talk about my next highest grade, the B minus. This was in property. My professor, very interesting guy. Really like him. Across the table, you're gonna find I like my professors. I actually have this professor again. I have two professors from this semester, next semester. So that'll be interesting because I have this professor next semester for copyright. And as far as property goes, this was a closed book final. I still didn't get as much study time as I'd have liked. Next year, that will be very different. I will actually have the time, because if I am doing any kind of work, if all goes well with my summer position, if I'm doing any kind of work next year, it won't be delivery. It'll be things that still keep me legally sharp. So there's that hope. Not a bad final. The multiple choice wasn't too bad. I do think that there is something needed with me just remembering the rules of property, but it was good to have a closed book exam because that meant that just my brain was my own limitation, and that's how the bar is going to be. And I think prepping us for the bar this early isn't a bad thing necessarily. I also think it's kind of an equalizer because, there's if some students write great outlines that they can like easily compartmentalize and search, but their brain box doesn't do that. Yeah, that is a slight advantage. So you know what? Again, I'm fine with the B minus. My B is in con law, and that final, I'm glad I'm happy that I got a B. I think I probably got a B because other people got like A pluses or A's, and you have to keep that B plus median. This was a visiting professor, Professor Anthony Kreis. Really loved having him. He's at Georgia State. Any of you that are going to Georgia State, if you get him, awesome, because he was an excellent teacher. Great personality, outstanding historical context, and yeah, just all around great guy. And he used RNGesus, which means he used a random number generator for cold calls, and somehow RNGesus spared me. I went the entire semester. I never got picked on by the random number generator. I know a few people who got picked on like 5 times. There is a wild thing that happened to me in my 1.0 year. I had 0 cold calls. Wow, you know what? That sounds like the beginning of a LinkedIn post. I'm gonna have to save that to do an intro post on LinkedIn before next semester. In my 1.0, how many cold calls I had? 0. Here's what this taught me about preparedness. I don't know. Something. I'll figure out the LinkedIn bullshit later. The final was interesting because, and I really wanted to talk to him about it, which I think I can actually message him on Blue Sky now to be like, hey, so I was curious because it seemed like there wasn't really a lot to be done, and I also want to know if that helped me or hurt me. The fact that, for an example, I used a fictional character, Andrew Dickhead or A Dickhead, and asked if A Dickhead was doing this, would this be legal? So yeah, it was fun. It was a very interesting class. I do want to take a more advanced constitutional law class. I want to take a more advanced. Oh wait, you know what? We're going to talk about my next grade now, which is crim law. So a B plus in crim law, which, you know what, I am over the moon for that because that was a multiple choice exam and that exam was hard. Like I really want to see what I cannot wait to review that exam because that will be just such an interesting thing to see what I did and didn't quite understand, and I really want to know what the deviation was on that. That class was more like a philosophy and theory of my professor Martha Duncan. I loved her. She does, because her voice isn't exactly booming. She does use a microphone, and occasionally the technology hated her. I was very glad that I sat in front in that class, and yeah, I thought that that was a really fun class. Anybody who is a philosophy major, I think you will really enjoy crim law and constitutional law when you start doing your law exams. Again, there was no essay on this one. I know one of the other professors, Professor Levine, had apparently a harder test with essays and stuff. And Professor Levine is like very known in the criminal law space. So I am very excited that next year I have her for constitutional criminal procedure. So I look forward to that. And yeah, B plus. That means I'm median. So the class that I was like definitively mid on was criminal law. Everything else I was below mid except for the one place where I got an A. And that would be employment law, which I am excited about because I love the employment law space. In fact, I'm taking employee benefits next year to talk about ERISA. I love things in the employment space. That seems to really speak to me. That class, Professor Das Acevedo, Deepa Das Acevedo, she's a badass. So look her up sometime. She's got so many things going for her, and she specializes in employment. So I think she was an excellent instructor. She does my favorite types of readings where she uses this platform called Chart a Course. So yeah, it costs a tiny fee, which I think was $70 last year. And my roommate took Carissa, and so he told me that she does the same thing there, where she cuts down the case law to the relevant facts, the ruling, and why. So even my longest reading in that class was maybe my longest day of reading was an hour and a half, if that. And that was like a particularly long set of employment torts. Usually my readings could be done in like a half hour because she nailed it down to the bare essentials, and I loved that. That was awesome. That exam was also interesting because it was open universe, which means you could use anything in the world. And like, because her philosophy was, if I made your textbook online and your cases online and didn't give you access to online, that would be a terrible move on my part. So yeah, she let us do that. So our outline. I basically just used my outline. I didn't really search online. I maybe searched one thing, but I don't even. No, I don't think so because there wasn't anything on the test that I don't think was not. I don't think there's anything on the test that wasn't covered in class somehow, and I thought that was. And I thought that was very nice because, yeah. Again, I have no complaints whatsoever. I got an A minus in that class, which means even with access to with everybody having access to everything, the ultimate level field upon which to do battle, I still managed to rise above. But again, I think that my particular passion for the subject really elevated that for me. So that's yeah, that's great. I'm excited. I'm happy to report that. And in the end, that gives me a 3.025. Last semester I had a 3.038. So that means I did dip just a little. and that is unfortunate because that doesn't look great. Clearly, I won't be transferring to Harvard next semester, so I'll see you back here in Atlanta. So comes the big question at the end of the year. Did I make a mistake by choosing Emory? Am I happy with my choice of Emory? What would I do differently if I had to choose again? I do think I made the right choice. Like, were there schools that were probably a better fit? Yeah, I'll say that. I have no problem saying that. I think that I would have done excellently at Rutgers. In fact, I do kind of wish I'd have kept considering Rutgers just a little longer, especially to be in the Philly area, be up there by New York, because I am sad that there are things I keep missing because I can't be in New York. But again, it's nice to not have to deal with snow. Um, what else? And also Nebraska again. Not having the stress, I probably wouldn't have had to work as much in Nebraska. And honestly, I'm going to tell you this right now. If I had been, because I did this when I visited, if I had been doing Instacart in Nebraska, I'd probably make more than I do here in Atlanta. Because Atlanta's roads are terrible. Atlanta people don't tip. Atlanta in general, especially if you have to cross the city, terrible place to do Instacart. And at least I could rely on in Nebraska, because I don't care about college football, I'd probably be able to make even more money then because I'd be one of the few people who were out during college football time. Down here I'm in the South. This is SEC country. It's kind of interesting because my college didn't really. We had like a women's basketball team that did pretty well at Brooklyn College. At least as far as the City University of New York system goes, that league. I think our men were decent. I think we had decent soccer teams as well. And here at Emory, this is a D3 school. I think actually the D3 basketball team did really well this year for men's. I think the soccer team again is decent. But to kind of tell you what kind of school Emory is, the golf and tennis teams are particularly outstanding. Again, the other schools that I could have gone to were the University of Arizona, which I do wish I'd have known about earlier. It did seem like it had very cool programming. Still probably not a bad choice overall. I do at least know some friends out there. And I would be close to my daughter, and I would have been closer to my grandmother when she passed. So that, yeah, that's a little better, but I don't think Tucson is, as thriving of a city as like the university as Atlanta is. And GW, again, I think I will forever be bitter about the fact that they offered me zero scholarship at George Washington University. I don't know. It's like unless if I become just an absolutely terrible lawyer, then I'll be like, yeah, okay, clearly you saw something that I didn't realize. But until then, yeah, I'm still salty that they gave me no money because would I have liked to have gone? Yes. Am I willing to take a $250,000 difference to find out? No. Oh God, no. Especially not with interest. So that leads me to where I am now. Emory Law. You've seen the shirt. You've seen it on the channel the entire time. Did I make a mistake choosing Emory? No. I would have always wondered. I do think Emory more so, especially because Emory gave me an offership. Had I taken any of the three publics, I do think any of the other publics probably would have been a better culture fit. Because at least from those admitted students, they did tend to skew older. This class seemed to skew closer to like my baby sister's age. Almost everybody in my class that I've met is somewhere between my baby sister and my daughter in terms of age. With one of my better friends being someone who is like basically right in between the two of them and is like as young as you could get reasonably and be in law school. But they're a great person. But overall, like a lot of these people have had very different lives than I have at most points in their life. I don't know a way to say that that doesn't sound demeaning or derogatory. I'm happy for them. I'm glad that a lot of them have not needed to know a lot of the struggles I know, both socioeconomically and, of course, the struggles I appointed to myself through my own terrible choices and decisions. And like I tell everybody, I want them to go out there and make mistakes. I just don't want them to make my mistakes. My mistakes suck, and my mistakes cause a lot of issues going forward. But yeah, I think that I had the best Civ Pro professor in the country, Rich Freer. If you don't know him now, if you do anything with Barbary, you will. I think I have a better understanding of civil procedure than I would if I were anywhere else, because he's just that good of an instructor. I do think ending up with Professor Das Acevedo, I think the only place I could have really ended up with a better employment law professor is if I ended up at the University of Virginia or the University of Michigan, which I am still saddened that I survived getting denied by the University of Michigan for so long, and I was basically in the last wave of dismissals. I will also forever be sad about that. I love you, Dean Z. You're a great, honest person, but man, I would have, as much as I talk mess about Winter, I would have survived to seeing Mr. Brightside in the stadium. I wish I'd have given different instructions to the University of Minnesota, but yeah, that would have been a very interesting place to. Yeah, if I'd have gotten into the University of Minnesota, my year would have been far more interesting than it already was. Anyway, peace out, party peoples. I will see you next time.